there, how's it going? It's been approximately 12 months since I sold the Jumbuck and end up with a Toyota Hilux, and after the Proton Jumbuck review I done a while back, thought it'd be a good idea to talk about where the Jumbuck's actually superior to the Hilux. So most Hilux, as you know, with the Hilux, it's one of the most popular utilities out there, and most people go, well, how can you compare a Hilux to a Jumbuck? They're totally different cars, and they are right, they're a totally different ute. But if it's what we're looking at is the budget end, you know, like a second-hand ute market. This one's a 2006 model, and it's the base model, it's the workmate, which that's what we have in Australia. It's very basic, it's just got power steering, air conditioning. Now I'll talk about a couple of things where it is superior to the Jumbuck, even though the Jumbuck was, the one I had was a 2009 model, so technically it's 3 years newer. It was well behind in a few of the few of the safety areas. Like this one's got airbags on passenger and driver's side. Now that's not always an advantage if it's a Carter airbags that haven't been recalled and replaced. They're even more dangerous than not having them at all, apparently. Anyway, this one, I know the history of the car. The airbags were replaced well before the recall even went out, because the previous owner had issues with it. The airbag light would come on, so they had it checked, and it turned out it needed to be replaced. So your top three advantages of the Jumbuck over the Hilux, where the Hilux only gets between 7 to 8 k's per litre, the Jumbuck was getting from 12 to 13 kilometres. That's driving conservatively. So it was much cheaper to refuel and got much further kilometres. This one's got a larger tank, and it's only getting around the same amount of kilometres. I think the Jumbuck had a 40-something litre tank from memory, where this one's got close to 80 litres. I'll check that on the manuals before this goes to air, of course. As the Jumbuck was a smaller car, driving it around city and parking in like the shopping centre car parks, the Jumbuck was a much easier proposition to park. You could get it into spots easy. You could see the front of the car a lot clearer. This one, the Hilux, has a lot of blind spots, and it's a much physically bigger car. You can't deny that. With the Jumbuck, when I put a bike in the back of the ute, I had to leave the tailgate down this one. Tailgate stays up, and there's a good, you know, anywhere from 150 mil to 300 mil, so half a foot to a foot different of space between the rear wheel and the tailgate. Now that wasn't a disadvantage to the Jumbuck. The Jumbuck was, because the tailgate was rated at 300 kilos, and it was a lot lower to the ground than this one. It made it loading heavier bikes much easier. Even the trail bike was far easier to load into the Jumbuck, because it was just, well, I'm tall, but it was only basically taking one step up into the Jumbuck, where the Hilux, I virtually need a 3-foot step ladder or a little step to step up and get the bike on. So that's a bit of a hassle, but considering I'm probably lucky to load the bike onto the ute once every 3 months maybe, it's, you know, it's things like that you can live with. Same with, you know, the tailgate being down on the Jumbuck. The third thing about it, it was a lot more fun throwing it around corners. That's because it weighed a little over a ton. It was so light and it was so low to the ground. It was a lot more fun to drive. Even though the motor wasn't as powerful as the Hilux, you had a lot of fun throwing it around the bends. So yeah, there was a bit of enjoyment, an enjoyment factor to it. Yeah, I suppose my top three. Where the Hilux does beat it is, you know, parts are much easier to come by. Yeah, there's that many of these Hiluxes built. There's plenty of wreckers that have spare parts for them. Their resale value, like to pick one of these up, you know, in the condition this one's in, you're looking at anywhere from 5 to 7 grand. Where, you know, I sold the Jumbuck for $1,900, but it had rego. Rego was getting close to being due on it. I think it was only 2 to 3 months before rego expired, and I just needed the cash, and I didn't need another car to be spending money on. Honestly, if I suppose most people say, well, why did you buy the Hilux if the Jumbucks are much, you know, you were so happy with it? This Hilux actually belonged to my father. He retired and moved up to Queensland, and was happily retired up there. Went out, bought himself a brand new car, and didn't have much use for this one. I don't think the trade-in was that terrific, so he called me up and said, look, do you want it? Now, my father had pretty much owned this car from new. He got it from his work. Well, the 3 years it was at his work, he looked after it, so it had a relatively easy life. It had less Ks than the Jumbuck, so it was worth, yeah, and I knew the history of it. I put it through the same the same sort of punishment I put the Jumbuck through. Yeah. Anyway, if this was just any other ute, I wouldn't have bought it. The fact it was my father's. I knew the history. I knew how well it'd been looked after. I was quite happy to go up and pick it up and bring it back home. Now everyone says, well, you know, you're kidding. Hiluxes are a much better car, and here's where it is better. If you need to tow, this thing's got plenty of grunt to tow. It's a 2.7 litre petrol engine. So I've towed. I've had a trailer with a bobcat, like a mini excavator on it, and it towed it. It was effortless. You know, their reliability unquestioned. Although I've had more issues with this one than what I did with the Jumbuck. So far to date, I've had to replace the alternator. That was 170,000 kilometre mark. Which, yeah, no big deal. It's a car's over 10 years, so you expect there's going to be issues. And that's pretty much it. The Jumbuck had better rear storage and a center console. This has got the extra seat. It's a bench seat. I'm quite comfy on a bench seat, and this is really a single seat with the bench is like two passenger, the passenger and the middle person. Technology wise, there's not much difference apart from the airbag. Both had air conditioning, both got power steering, and they're both the base model. I still recommend, like, if you're going to buy a second-hand ute, if you're going to keep it for a while, get the base model. You're going to have less issues with it. There's less things that can fail, but if you like your gadgets, well, yeah, that's your choice. So let's recap that. The top 3 items where the Jumbuck, I feel, was superior to the Hilux. Number 1, fuel economy. Number 2, the size, especially if you're in a city or, you know, a town where your car park spaces are quite small and pathetic in the shopping centres. And number 3, it was just more fun to drive. The advantage the Hilux has, well, it's a Toyota. It's better resale value, much bigger motor. So, you know, where the Jumbuck was more had better fuel economy. This can virtually tow a house. It's got plenty of power. It can hold more on the back, and the Jumbuck was no slouch there either. That's pretty much it, really. Yeah, I rate this. I do rate the Hilux. I've been a fan of them. You know, my work always had Hiluxes, and they were a very reliable vehicle. But as I said, don't discount a Jumbuck if you can get one for the right price. They're a good little car. As I said, they share a lot of the older Mitsubishi, like the motor, brakes, a lot of things are interchangeable on them, which is very handy, especially, you know, on that side of the parts scale. You know, they don't have the acceleration of the Hilux, but they're definitely a lot more fun to drive through, you know, throw through bends and stuff. And really, if you only if you're after a car sub $3,000 Australian, a Jumbuck's you can pick up a low mileage Jumbuck, something between 100 and 150,000 quite easily if you took your time. Where if you're trying to get a Hilux for that same price, that won't happen. They're commanding almost double that. And anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.